William Shakespeare, A Life in 5 Acts. Early life and background, 1564 to 1585. William Shakespeare's birth on April 23, 1564, in the small market town of Stratford-upon-Avon, marked the beginning of a life that would significantly shape English literature and the world's cultural heritage. Stratford, located in Warwickshire, was a relatively prosperous town, though not as influential as larger cities like London. Shakespeare's family belonged to the burgeoning middle class, and it was this early stability that helped pave the way for his later achievements. Shakespeare's father, John Shakespeare, was a man of considerable local standing. A skilled glove maker by trade, he was also involved in wool trading and other commodities. John was active in local politics, holding several important civic positions in Stratford. He served as a borough alderman and later as the town's bailiff, a role equivalent to mayor, which indicates that the family was well respected within the community. However, records suggest that John Shakespeare's fortunes fluctuated later in life, possibly due to financial struggles or legal issues, which might have impacted his son's early experiences. Shakespeare's mother, Mary Arden, hailed from a more aristocratic background. The Arden family was one of the oldest land-owning families in Warwickshire, and Mary's dowry helped provide the couple with some financial security early on. This union between a local tradesman and a woman of noble lineage gave Shakespeare a foot in two worlds, one of practical, mercantile work, and the other of rural gentry. This duality may have influenced his understanding of both the common folk and the nobility, themes he would explore in his plays. William was the third of 8 children in the Shakespeare household, though only 6 survived past infancy. His early years would have been spent in a bustling home, full of activity and responsibilities. The social standing of his family ensured that young Shakespeare had access to education, but the exact details of his early schooling remain speculative. It is widely believed that Shakespeare attended the local grammar school, King's New School, located in Stratford. Though no formal records of his schooling exist, it is almost certain that he would have received a classical education. The curriculum at the time emphasized Latin, the language of educated men, and included the study of classical literature, history, and rhetoric. Works by authors like Ovid, Virgil, Seneca, and Plutarch were central to the syllabus. The influence of these classical texts on Shakespeare's later plays is profound, as many of his plots and themes are directly inspired by Roman and Greek mythology, as well as historical events from the ancient world. In addition to Latin, Shakespeare would have studied English history and possibly a bit of the legal framework of the time, which may have informed his writing. His later works display an intimate knowledge of both historical and contemporary political affairs, which suggests that he was well-read and deeply attuned to the societal forces around him. There is little evidence to suggest that Shakespeare continued his education beyond grammar school, as it was not common for boys of his social standing to attend university unless they were destined for the clergy or legal professions. This lack of a university education later became a point of contention among some of his contemporaries and critics, who questioned how a man of relatively modest education could write with such profound insight. However, the breadth and depth of Shakespeare's work suggest that his real education continued outside the classroom, through life experience, voracious reading, and exposure to the theatrical world. In 1582, at the age of 18, Shakespeare married Anne Hathaway, who was 26 at the time, an unusually large age gap for the period, and came from Shottery, a village just outside Stratford. She was the daughter of a respected farmer, Richard Hathaway, and likely had some financial stability of her own. Their marriage may have been hastened by the fact that Anne was already pregnant with their first child when they wed. The marriage license was issued on November 27, 1582, and, somewhat unusually, the couple did not marry in Stratford, but rather in Temple Grafton, a nearby village. This has led some historians to speculate on the nature of their relationship, whether it was a passionate romance or a hastily arranged union. Whatever the circumstances, Shakespeare's first child, Susanna, was born in May 1583, just 6 months after the wedding. Shakespeare and went on to have 2 more children, the twins Hamlet and Judith, born in February 1585. Unfortunately, their son Hamlet died at the age of 11 in 1596, an event that may have influenced some of Shakespeare's later works, particularly his more somber reflections on grief and mortality in plays like Hamlet. While Shakespeare's marriage to Anne Hathaway has been the subject of much speculation, especially given the many sonnets and plays he wrote exploring themes of love, betrayal, and longing, very little concrete information exists about their personal relationship. Some suggest that Shakespeare's extended periods of time away from Stratford, when he was working in London, could indicate a lack of closeness between the couple. However, this was not unusual for the time, especially for someone engaged in a demanding profession like the theater. After the birth of Hamlet and Judith in 1585, there is a period in Shakespeare's life that remains largely undocumented, often referred to by scholars as the lost years. Between 1585 and 1592, records of Shakespeare's whereabouts and activities are virtually non-existent. This gap has given rise to numerous theories about what Shakespeare was doing during this time. One theory is that Shakespeare may have worked as a schoolmaster or tutor, possibly for a wealthy family in the north of England. Another popular belief is that he might have been employed by a law office or worked as an apprentice actor or playwright in one of the traveling theater companies. The lack of solid evidence leaves much of this period to the imagination of biographers and historians. What seems most likely is that sometime during these lost years, Shakespeare made his way to London, where he would eventually become involved in the city's burgeoning theater scene. London in the late 16th century was a thriving center of commerce, politics, and culture. The theater was one of the main forms of entertainment, attracting people from all walks of life. It was here that Shakespeare would begin his ascent, moving from an obscure playwright to one of the most celebrated writers in English history. While we do not know exactly when Shakespeare arrived in London, by 1592, he was already gaining recognition as a playwright. This is confirmed by a contemporary pamphlet written by playwright Robert Greene, who derogatorily referred to Shakespeare as an upstart crow, in a passage that has since become famous. This criticism suggests that Shakespeare, despite his non-university background, was already making waves in the literary scene, much to the chagrin of more established writers. Shakespeare's early years in London were likely full of struggles as he tried to establish himself in a competitive environment. However, his early works, ranging from historical plays like Henry VI to comedies like The Comedy of Errors, demonstrated a wide range of talent, eventually earning him a place as a key member of the Lord Chamberlain's Men, one of the most successful theater companies of the era. The London Stage and Early Career, 1585 to 1599. The years between 1585 and 1599 represent one of the most transformative periods in William Shakespeare's life and career. During this time, Shakespeare evolved from a young playwright seeking his fortune in London to a prominent and respected figure in the city's literary and theater circles. This era also saw the development of some of his most important early works, including plays that are still regarded as masterpieces today. Though the exact timeline of Shakespeare's arrival in London remains speculative, it is generally believed that he moved to the city sometime in the mid to late 1580s. London, at this time, was the cultural and economic heart of England. The city was rapidly expanding, and the theater scene was becoming a dominant force in entertainment. Playhouses like the Theatre, the Curtain, and later the Globe drew large crowds eager to witness the latest dramas and comedies. Shakespeare's early years in London were likely filled with challenges, as he attempted to make a name for himself in a city already crowded with established playwrights. It is possible that Shakespeare began his career as an actor or an assistant in a theater company, which would have provided him with first-hand experience of stagecraft. He may have also collaborated with other writers, a common practice at the time. By 1592, however, Shakespeare had begun to establish himself as a playwright in his own right. This is evidenced by a pamphlet written by the university-educated playwright Robert Greene, who in his deathbed manifesto, Greene's Groat Worth of Wit, mockingly referred to Shakespeare as an upstart crow. Greene criticized Shakespeare for daring to write plays despite his lack of a formal university education, labeling him an upstart crow beautified with our feathers. This insult, while meant to belittle Shakespeare, is often seen as a testament to his growing influence and success. The fact that Greene, a member of the so-called university wits, a group of elite, classically trained playwrights, felt threatened by Shakespeare suggests that he was already making waves in the competitive London theatre scene. In 1593, a plague outbreak caused the theatres in London to close, halting much of Shakespeare's work as a playwright. During this period of enforced inactivity, Shakespeare turned his attention to poetry, producing two long narrative poems, Venus and Adonis, 1593, and The Rape of Lucrece, 1594. Both works were dedicated to Shakespeare's patron, Henry Wriothesley, the Earl of Southampton, a young nobleman who provided Shakespeare with financial support and likely helped him secure introductions to the upper echelons of London society. Venus and Adonis, Shakespeare's first published work, tells the story of the goddess Venus's unrequited love for the mortal Adonis, blending sensuality, wit, and classical mythological references. The poem was a commercial success, going through multiple reprints during Shakespeare's lifetime. Its popularity helped cement his reputation not only as a playwright but also as a poet. The Rape of Lucrece, published the following year, is a darker and more somber work, focusing on the tragic consequences of Lucrece's rape by Sextus Tarquinius, a Roman prince. Shakespeare's ability to explore complex psychological and moral dilemmas in these poems foreshadows the depth of character and emotion that would later define his greatest plays. Both poems also demonstrate his mastery of intricate imagery and his deep knowledge of classical literature, which would become hallmarks of his writing. These early successes in poetry gave Shakespeare the financial stability and social connections he needed to further his career as a playwright once the theatres reopened in 1594. With the reopening of the theatres in 1594, Shakespeare quickly resumed his work in the playhouses. By this time, he had joined one of the leading acting companies in London, the Lord Chamberlain's Men, a group that performed for both public audiences and the royal court. The company included several of the best actors of the day, including Richard Burbage, who would later originate many of Shakespeare's most famous roles, and Will Kemp, a well-known comedic actor. Shakespeare was not only the company's principal playwright but also a shareholder, a role that provided him with a steady income and financial security. Shakespeare's early plays demonstrate a remarkable range of genres and themes. The Comedy of Errors, one of his first comedies, is a fast-paced, farcical play about mistaken identities and the chaotic consequences that ensue. Its humor and clever plotting showed that Shakespeare was already adept at entertaining audiences with light-hearted fare. In contrast, Titus Andronicus is a grisly revenge tragedy filled with violence, betrayal, and political intrigue. Though not as highly regarded as Shakespeare's later tragedies, it was popular with Elizabethan audiences who had a taste for such brutal narratives. The play's focus on vengeance and corruption reflects the influence of Seneca, the Roman playwright whose works were widely studied during Shakespeare's schooling. Shakespeare's Henry VI trilogy, parts 1, 2, and 3, and Richard III followed, marking the beginning of his long engagement with English history as a subject for his plays. These early history plays, written in the late 1580s and early 1590s, chronicle the Wars of the Roses and explore themes of power, legitimacy, and the consequences of civil conflict. Richard III, in particular, stands out for its complex portrayal of the titular character, a cunning, ruthless, and manipulative ruler whose Machiavellian rise to power fascinated audiences. Shakespeare's reputation grew steadily during this period, with each play solidifying his place as one of London's premier playwrights. By 1594, his position with the Lord Chamberlain's Men had made him a leading figure in the world of English theatre. The company performed regularly at the theatre, a popular playhouse in Shoreditch, and later at the Globe Theatre, which became their primary venue. In 1595, Shakespeare wrote one of his most iconic and enduring works, Romeo and Juliet. A tragic love story set in Verona, the play tells the tale of two star-crossed lovers whose relationship is doomed by the feud between their families, the Montagues and the Capulets. Romeo and Juliet is remarkable not only for its poignant exploration of young love and the forces that conspire to destroy it but also for its poetic language and innovative use of dramatic structure. The play blends elements of comedy and tragedy, with light-hearted scenes of romance and banter juxtaposed against moments of profound sorrow and violence. Its depiction of the intensity and passion of youthful love, as well as the devastating consequences of familial conflict, resonated with Elizabethan audiences and continues to captivate modern readers and theatergoers. Romeo and Juliet is also notable for its use of iambic pentameter, a rhythmic structure that would become a hallmark of Shakespeare's later work. The lyrical beauty of its verse, particularly in scenes like the famous balcony exchange between the lovers, showcases Shakespeare's growing confidence and mastery as a playwright. Around the same time as Romeo and Juliet, Shakespeare wrote A Midsummer Night's Dream, another of his early masterpieces. This play, a fantastical comedy set in a magical forest, weaves together multiple plots involving love, jealousy, and transformation. Its imaginative use of the supernatural, as well as its exploration of the nature of love and illusion, made it a favorite with audiences. Puck, the mischievous fairy, and Bottom, the bumbling weaver, are among the most beloved comic characters in Shakespeare's oeuvre. Shakespeare also continued his exploration of English history with Richard III, a play that depicts the rise and fall of the power-hungry, deformed king. Richard is one of Shakespeare's most compelling villains, manipulating those around him with a chilling combination of charm and ruthlessness. The play's portrayal of political ambition, deceit, and the human cost of tyranny foreshadows the themes that Shakespeare would explore in his later, more mature tragedies. The height of his powers, 1599 to 1608. By the turn of the 17th century, William Shakespeare had reached the zenith of his career. As the preeminent playwright in England, he was not only celebrated for his skillful manipulation of language and form but also for his profound understanding of the human condition. This period from 1599 to 1608 is widely regarded as Shakespeare's most productive and artistically powerful phase, during which he wrote many of his greatest works, including a mix of history plays, comedies, and, most notably, his most celebrated tragedies. A pivotal moment in Shakespeare's career came in 1603, when King James I ascended to the throne of England. The Lord Chamberlain's Men, the acting company to which Shakespeare belonged, was officially taken under the patronage of the king and renamed the King's Men. This royal endorsement not only elevated the company's prestige but also ensured Shakespeare's lasting place in the English court's cultural life. The King's Men performed regularly at the royal court as well as at the famed Globe Theatre, a venue Shakespeare had helped establish in 1599. The Globe Theatre, located on the south bank of the Thames River, was a crucial element of Shakespeare's success during this period. As a shareholder in the Globe, Shakespeare benefited financially from its popular productions, but more importantly, the theatre provided him with a stable platform for his plays. Its open-air design and large audience capacity allowed Shakespeare to experiment with dramatic form, accommodating both the highbrow tastes of courtly audiences and the entertainment needs of the general public. Among the significant works from this period are Shakespeare's history plays, which delve deeply into issues of leadership, power, and national identity. In Henry IV, Parts 1 and 2, 1597 to 1598, and Henry V, 1599, Shakespeare explores the themes of kingship, honor, and the responsibilities that come with authority. These plays follow the character arc of Prince Hal, who evolves from a wayward, irresponsible youth into the noble and heroic King Henry V, ultimately leading his troops to victory at the Battle of Agincourt. In these history plays, Shakespeare masterfully intertwines the personal struggles of his characters with broader political and nationalistic concerns. The character of Falstaff, the boisterous, humorous, and morally ambiguous knight in Henry IV, offers a counterpoint to the princely virtue of Hal. The blend of comedy and political drama in these plays highlights Shakespeare's ability to navigate different genres and tones seamlessly. With Henry V, Shakespeare solidified his reputation as a playwright who could tackle both individual character studies and larger thematic explorations of leadership and national unity. While Shakespeare's histories and tragedies are often celebrated for their gravitas, his comedies during this period demonstrate an equal mastery over wit, humor, and human folly. Works like Much Ado About Nothing, 1598, As You Like It, 1599, and Twelfth Night, 1602, exhibit Shakespeare's deep understanding of the complexities of love, miscommunication, and human relationships. Much Ado About Nothing presents a lively interplay of wit and romance between Beatrice and Benedick, two characters whose sharp banter and resistance to love underscore Shakespeare's insight into the psychological games that lovers play. The play's light-hearted tone masks an exploration of deeper themes, such as honor, reputation, and the constraints of social norms. Similarly, Twelfth Night delves into the absurdities of love, employing mistaken identities, cross-dressing, and comedic misunderstandings. The character of Viola, who disguises herself as a man, becomes the center of a tangled web of unrequited love and mistaken attraction. The play's exploration of gender roles and identity remains relevant to contemporary audiences, and its humor continues to charm readers and viewers alike. In As You Like It, Shakespeare brings his audience into the idyllic setting of the Forest of Arden, where characters escape the oppressive structures of the court and experience self-discovery and romantic renewal. The character Rosalind, one of Shakespeare's most beloved heroines, shines as a witty, resourceful woman who drives the plot forward with her intelligence and charm. The play's examination of love's complexities and the search for authenticity in a world full of artifice remains timeless. While Shakespeare's comedies and histories are admired for their wit and complexity, it was his tragedies during this period that truly elevated him to the status of literary legend. These tragedies, Hamlet, 1600, Othello, 1604, Macbeth, 1606, and King Lear, 1606, are considered among the greatest works in the Western literary canon, with their intricate characterizations and profound explorations of the darker aspects of the human soul. Hamlet, perhaps Shakespeare's most famous and analyzed work, is a deeply philosophical and psychological play. At its heart is the character of Prince Hamlet, whose existential crisis and quest for revenge after the murder of his father resonate with themes of mortality, madness, and the nature of existence. Hamlet's soliloquy, "To be or not to be," has become one of the most iconic passages in world literature, encapsulating the character's profound contemplation of life and death. The play's exploration of human frailty, betrayal, and the search for meaning is unparalleled. Following Hamlet, Shakespeare wrote Othello, a tragedy that delves into the destructive power of jealousy and manipulation. The play's portrayal of Othello, a Moorish general in the Venetian army, and his tragic downfall at the hands of the villainous Iago, raises questions about race, trust, and the fragility of love. The complexity of Iago as a character, whose motivations remain elusive even as he orchestrates Othello's ruin, showcases Shakespeare's unparalleled ability to create psychologically nuanced villains. In Macbeth, Shakespeare examines the corrosive effects of ambition and guilt. The titular character, spurred on by a prophecy and his wife's encouragement, murders his way to the throne, only to be consumed by paranoia and remorse. The play's exploration of power, fate, and the moral consequences of unchecked ambition remains one of the most chilling in Shakespeare's oeuvre. Lady Macbeth, with her famous plea to be unsexed so that she may carry out the murder of King Duncan, is one of Shakespeare's most complex and compelling female characters. King Lear, written in 1606, is widely regarded as one of Shakespeare's greatest achievements. The play's portrayal of a king's descent into madness after he divides his kingdom among his daughters is both a personal tragedy and a political allegory. Lear's journey from arrogance and blindness to humility and despair is deeply moving, and the play's themes of betrayal, family dynamics, and the fragility of human relationships continue to resonate with audiences. The subplot involving Gloucester and his sons Edgar and Edmund parallels the main story, amplifying the play's exploration of loyalty, treachery, and redemption. Toward the end of this period, Shakespeare turned his attention to Roman history and politics, producing two final major tragedies, Antony and Cleopatra, 1606, and Coriolanus, 1608. These plays demonstrate Shakespeare's growing interest in the interplay between politics and personal desire. In Antony and Cleopatra, Shakespeare presents the tragic love affair between the Roman general Mark Antony and the Egyptian queen Cleopatra. The play is remarkable for its sprawling structure and its exploration of the tension between duty and passion. Antony is torn between his responsibilities as a leader and his all-consuming love for Cleopatra, leading to his ultimate downfall. The play's portrayal of Cleopatra, a powerful and charismatic woman, is one of Shakespeare's most nuanced and multidimensional female characters. Coriolanus explores the story of a Roman general who, despite his military prowess, is ultimately undone by his pride and inability to navigate the complexities of political life. The play's exploration of class conflict, populism, and the dangers of excessive pride reflects Shakespeare's growing concern with the personal costs of leadership and the fragile balance between the ruler and the ruled. Act 4. Later Life and Final Works, 1608 to 1616. After the prolific period of the early 1600s, William Shakespeare's creative output began to slow down around 1608. The transition from intense activity to a more reflective phase is evident in his later plays, often categorized as late romances. These works, The Winter's Tale, Cymbeline, and The Tempest, are distinct from his earlier tragedies and comedies. They blend elements of tragedy, comedy, and romance, reflecting deeper, more introspective themes such as redemption, forgiveness, and the passage of time. One of the defining characteristics of Shakespeare's late romances is the thematic shift toward reconciliation and redemption. In earlier tragedies like King Lear or Othello, the final act often resulted in catastrophic loss and death. In contrast, the late romances offer more hopeful conclusions, where characters who have endured suffering find redemption and, in many cases, forgiveness. In The Winter's Tale, 1611, the first half of the play unfolds as a tragedy, with King Leontes wrongly accusing his wife Hermione of infidelity, leading to the death of their young son and Hermione's apparent demise. However, the second half shifts into a romance, as time heals the wounds, and Leontes is granted forgiveness, culminating in a miraculous reunion with his wife. The play underscores the theme of time's ability to heal and restore, a theme that resonates across Shakespeare's later works. Cymbeline, 1610, also weaves a complex narrative of misunderstandings, betrayal, and eventual reconciliation. The play mixes historical elements with fairy tale-like qualities, featuring a banished princess, an evil queen, and a long-lost child, all set against a backdrop of imperial Rome and ancient Britain. Like The Winter's Tale, Cymbeline explores the trials of human frailty, the possibility of atonement, and the eventual triumph of good over evil. The Tempest, 1611, widely regarded as one of Shakespeare's finest achievements, is often seen as his farewell to the stage. The central character, Prospero, a magician and the deposed Duke of Milan, uses his magical powers to orchestrate a series of events that restore order after a period of chaos. At the heart of the play is the theme of forgiveness, as Prospero ultimately chooses to forgive those who wronged him, including his brother, who usurped his dukedom. Many scholars view Prospero's final act of breaking his magical staff and renouncing his powers as a symbolic gesture reflecting Shakespeare's own decision to step away from the world of theater. Prospero's famous speech, "Our revels now are ended," carries a poignant sense of closure, suggesting Shakespeare's own contemplation of art, life, and legacy. The play is imbued with a tone of farewell, not just for Prospero but perhaps for Shakespeare himself. Around 1613, Shakespeare retired from active playwriting and returned to Stratford-upon-Avon, his hometown. By this time, he had accumulated wealth and was able to live a relatively comfortable and quiet life. Unlike some of his contemporaries, Shakespeare never sought a prominent position at court or sought noble titles. Instead, he spent his final years managing his estate and family affairs. Though Shakespeare's professional life brought him fame, little is known about his personal life during his retirement. He had purchased New Place, one of the largest houses in Stratford, and lived there with his family. Despite being one of the most famous figures in England, he kept a low profile, rarely making public appearances or engaging in political matters. On April 23, 1616, William Shakespeare died at the age of 52. He was buried in the chancel of Holy Trinity Church in Stratford, the same church where he had been baptized as an infant. His gravestone bears an inscription that is believed to have been written by Shakespeare himself, warning those who might disturb his remains. "Good friend, for Jesus' sake forbear to dig the dust enclosed here. Blessed be the man that spares these stones, and cursed be he that moves my bones." This epitaph reflects a personal, almost playful side of Shakespeare, combining religious sentiment with a touch of wit. Shakespeare's legacy, however, far transcends his modest grave. Although he passed away in relative obscurity compared to his posthumous fame, his works endured, gaining widespread recognition during the Restoration period and beyond. The First Folio, a collection of Shakespeare's plays compiled by his friends and fellow actors in 1623, preserved many of his works for future generations. Today, Shakespeare is regarded as one of the greatest writers in the English language, with his plays still performed and studied across the globe. In his final works, Shakespeare encapsulated a lifetime of literary exploration, balancing human fallibility with the capacity for grace and forgiveness, while contemplating the ephemeral nature of life and the power of art. Act 5. Shakespeare's legacy and influence. Shakespeare's impact on literature, theater, and the English language is immeasurable. His works have been translated into every major living language and are performed more often than those of any other playwright. He coined or popularized thousands of words and phrases still in use today, such as break the ice, wild goose chase, and heart of gold. Shakespeare's ability to capture the range of human emotions and the complexities of the human condition has made his work timeless. His exploration of universal themes, love, power, ambition, jealousy, and mortality, ensures that his plays remain relevant to modern audiences. His characters, from the introspective Hamlet to the scheming Lady Macbeth, continue to be studied, adapted, and performed across the world. In the 18th century, Shakespeare's reputation soared, as his works became central to English national identity. Writers and critics such as Samuel Johnson and Alexander Pope lauded his genius, while David Garrick, a famous actor and theater manager, helped popularize Shakespeare's plays on the stage once more. The Romantic poets, particularly William Wordsworth and Samuel Taylor Coleridge, admired Shakespeare for his insight into human nature and his ability to transcend the limitations of time and place. Coleridge famously remarked on Shakespeare's myriad-minded ability to inhabit the consciousness of diverse characters, from kings to commoners. Shakespeare's influence extended into the 19th and 20th centuries, shaping the works of major authors like Charles Dickens, James Joyce, and Virginia Woolf. His plays have been adapted countless times, from operas and ballets to films and modern-day retellings. The establishment of institutions like the Royal Shakespeare Company and the annual Shakespeare Festival in Stratford-upon-Avon are testaments to his enduring popularity. Modern scholars continue to analyze his works for new insights into his life, the historical context of his plays, and their deeper philosophical and psychological meanings. William Shakespeare remains an enigma in many ways, a man of relatively humble beginnings who became the greatest playwright in history, yet left behind few records of his personal life. His works, however, speak for themselves, offering audiences profound insights into the human soul. His plays and poems have transcended time, place, and culture, earning him the title, the Bard of Avon, and securing his place in literary immortality.